The film opens with a mixed martial artist, Octa, having trouble writing his daughter, Leone, a birthday card during his training, during which he's called out for practice by his buddy Cosima. After subduing all his buddies in practice, he is approached by his agent, Paul, who tells him to get ready for his professional fight with Benko after many delays. Hearing the news, Octa goes to his office to call his daughter one last time and apologizes for not showing up to her birthday and making it up to her later. Subsequently, Cosima comes to Octa with her problems, asking him to help her get her pay out of Paul, who keeps depriving her of it. He promises Cosima to convince Paul in her favor. The two then ride with Paul on their way to the ring. Midway through, Paul makes insensitive jokes about the birthday card Octa is holding, which enrages Octa, but Paul calms him down, reminding no one his age should put up with an ugly marriage or worrying about a child. When they get to the ring's parking lot, Paul purposefully triggers Octa in order to perform well in the fight, but Octa is still thinking about his daughter, who asks Paul to adopt a kitten from a shelter for her daughter's birthday present while he's gone fighting. Up next, Octa and his plus ones are standing near his poster in a hallway, where Octa faces Benko for the first time and gets angry seeing his face to the point where he pushes away his hyper-excited fans. When Paul takes Octa to get checked before the match, Octa's ex-wife, Mina, calls him and begins nagging about him being ignorant about his daughter. She also discloses that Leone is starving herself and refusing to celebrate her birthday unless Octa shows up with a cake. When Octa resolves this by promising he'll show up by 7, Mina finds issues in this as well and tells him to come early since their parents arrive around 6. She keeps triggering him and hangs up on top of that, due to which Octa becomes angry once again. Paul capitalizes on this and tells him to shift his anger towards the fight. When Cosima walks him down to the ring, Nina's lawyer calls him and pressurizes him into showing up at the party before 6, or else he'll lose Leone's joint custody and may never see her again. Octa starts cussing at him for daring to call him, but Mina takes over the phone and justifies the lawyer's statement, confirming she's plotting against Octa with his lawyer. Octa becomes so baffled by this revelation that he decides not to fight and run home instead, since there is only a 60-minute time window to not lose his daughter's custody. Paul tries to physically stop him, but the stressed-out Octa pushes him away and gets out of there. Out in the hallway, Chino and his brother, who are hardcore criminals and have bet on Octa's match, find out about his departure. They immediately send their thugs to get him back for selfish reasons. On the other hand, Octa has made it outside, who now snags another man's Uber ride to run away from the thugs after him. Paul calls him to reconsider his decision, but Octa bombards him with the crap Chino is pulling on him by sending his thugs after him. Paul hides the fact that Chino is not only his acquaintance, but a criminal who's placed a large bet on Octa. As he hangs up, Octa realizes his Uber is stuck in traffic, and since he's running short on time, he takes the risk of getting out and letting the thugs chase him. At last, he's cornered in a restaurant's back alley by Chino, his brother, and their thugs. Octa puts up a good fight, but gets ganged up on in the end and gets knocked out. Luckily, when he regains consciousness, he's able to beat everyone in the car he's being taken away in and walks out. Chino's brother blocks him and calls his thugs because he's not a fighter. As he leaves, Paul finally calls Octa and reveals that Chino had placed a $75,000 bet on him and rigged the match to purposefully let Octa win to redeem those $75,000. Hearing this, Octa becomes disappointed and hangs up on Paul. Since the thugs are still after him, he calls Cosima to let him in their gym, where the thugs break in and start fighting Octa, knowing he's called the cops. Now, the street thugs put up a fight against the trained martial arts buddies of Octa. When their friend overpowers the thugs, Octa and Cosima lock themselves in the bathroom, where Octa asks Cosima to set aside her problems and deliver a birthday cake at Leone's party on his behalf. When Octa escapes from the window, Chino's brother takes out a gun and threatens Octa's buddies to end the fight since their target has escaped. The thugs go after him, but when they see him running into a police car, they disperse. Suddenly, a car hits him by mistake, which prompts Octa to throw a fit at the driver. The cops find him guilty of misconduct and arrest him when he misbehaves with them too. When the cops take him way in their car, Chino's brother crashes his monster truck into the police car, revealing he's here to collect his prized possession, Octa. He manages to shake off the brother and run away from there to get the cake himself, since Cosima is broke and couldn't pay. At the shop, Chino's brother shows up and smacks the cake in Octa's hand, making him angrier. Octa pins him down and starts beating him until he turns into pulp, and Cosima forcibly pushes him off of the brother. Now, running out of time, Octa runs to Nina's house, but Chino's brother's sidekicks trace him and come after him. When they are about to get Octa, a friend of Paul named Rico makes a surprise entrance and gives Octa a helicopter ride, claiming Paul has sent him to help. Octa takes the bait and gets on the chopper, only to be trapped in a much bigger dispute between Chino and his Russian client Danica, whom Chino owes $500,000. Danica's translator ties Octa up and begins interrogating him. When they don't get their answers from Octa, they call Chino. Chino frighteningly updates them on how he's close to catching Octa, but the translator tells him he has caught Octa already and that he must come to collect him. Chino immediately makes his way to the address. Before he gets there, Danica orders her men to kill Octa and Chino, both for crossing her. When she leaves, Octa tricks the gunman and runs away while still being tied to a chair. He ends up in the subway station, where he gets a little girl's help to untie himself from the chair. There, he gets a call from Leon, who is upset because he hasn't yet shown up. He tries to tell her he's traveling all the way to reach her, but she hangs up on him. Octa's bad time seems never-ending when he gets off the next stop and finds 3 of Chino's men already waiting for him. To hide from them, he ends up running inside a bar, where one of the thugs attacks him off guard and punctures his lower abdomen. One of Chino's men finds this against the rule, so he pushes him away and tags along for a fight. After a long struggle, Octa beats him and walks out of the bar, only to find Paul tracking him. He immediately disconnects Paul from his smartwatch and tries to escape. After being constantly attacked and sabotaged, Octa finally collapses. Later, Paul approaches him and apologizes for everything he's put Paul through. He tries to justify it by telling his life is at stake due to the bet and Octa running away because Chino owes Danica $500,000, which he was planning to pay through the bet money. He also tries to convince Octa to return to the ring, but he cusses at him and speeds away on someone's electric scooter and visits his parents' house to tend to his wound and take a short recess first. Paul calls him once again and tries to find out his location by trapping him in a web of lies, but Octa figures out he's the imposter and hangs up on him. Now, Octa comes up with a master plan to get Chino and Russians off his back so he can attend Leon's birthday without being interrupted. He goes to the shelter to get his cat and calls Paul and Rico to show up there, knowing Chino and the Russians will pop up after them. After forcing the shelter guy to open the shelter and give him his selected kitten, Octa calls the cops and rats out Chino and the Russians. Once he finds the kitten, he puts it in a gift box and exits from the back, only to be met with Chino holding a crowbar and having his thugs assault Paul on the spot. Out of options, Octa surrenders to Chino. Simultaneously, Rico and the Russians show up, who open fire at Chino and his men. Chino suffers a mental collapse as a result. He throws a tantrum and accuses Octa of betraying him by not only calling the Russians, but the cops as well. Octa tries to convince him otherwise, but Chino is aware that Octa is lying. Chino realizes it is all Octa's fault, as the police arrive outside and start shooting at the Russians. He thus becomes frightened and starts shooting Paul's limbs. As Paul collapses, Chino attempts to shoot Octa as well, aiming for his head. Fortunately, Cosima unexpectedly appears and puts up a fight against Chino. She defeats Chino while displaying some outclass moves. Octa becomes energized by witnessing her enthusiasm and launches a surprise attack on Chino. As the two fight Chino together, Cosima falls multiple stories below after being kicked by Chino and passes out. Now, left alone, Octa fails to stand against Chino and also runs out of time to save Leon's custody. As his fences are lowered, Cosima regains consciousness and returns to continue her fight with Chino, during which the shot-down Paul gets a hold of a gun nearby and uses it to shoot Chino. Chino dodges the bullets and vanishes from there before getting caught by the cops. Left alone, Octa demands explanation for her surprise show-up, to which Cosima claims she was stalking Paul the entire time because she sensed he was up to something fishy. Paul intervenes to apologize, but Octa is still mad at him for keeping them in shadows and getting him involved with the thugs, so he doesn't let him speak and imposes a 25% raise in Cosima's pay on him. Now he avoids the cops and runs from the exit to show up at Leon's party. Chino tries to attack him on the streets once again, but he falls from weakness and wakes up with him gone. He takes the kitten out of the gift box and walks to Mina's place. Unfortunately, his weakness causes him to collapse just outside Mina's house. The kitten flees in the direction of Mina's house, which leads Leone to her fallen father. When she sees her father, she becomes emotional and excited, and she lies down with him on the ground. When Mina walks outside, the kitten puts her in a good mood automatically, so she doesn't bother Octa. Her lawyer, who turns out to be her boyfriend, tries to pin her against Octa once again, hinting he was the one hindering their relationship. However, Mina doesn't get influenced by his words and calmly watches how happy and relaxed Leone is with her father. The teachers and girls find her sitting alone on the stairs and crying, so they take her to the principal's office, where Felipe lashes out for more amazing recaps like that. Thank you for watching.